The Hells Angels biker saw the little girl lift a bent flash drive from a vent, and the data inside set his past on fire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. On a chilly afternoon in a rundown neighborhood, a rough-and-tumble Hells Angels biker named Jake was searching through an old, abandoned house he had been using as a hideout. He had been through plenty in his life, from wild motorcycle rides to countless battles with the law. His heart, once a fortress, was now hardened by years of pain, loss, and regret. But that day, something was about to change. As he rummaged through the dust-covered attic, something unusual caught his eye. A small, bent flash drive lay hidden in a vent, almost as if it had been waiting for him. Jake hesitated, his rough fingers brushing against the plastic, feeling the coolness of it against his skin. A strange sense of urgency flooded him. This was no ordinary find. He had seen many things in his time, but this felt different. With a deep breath, he picked up the flash drive and inspected it carefully. It was scratched, the corners dented, and it looked like it had been abandoned for years. He didn't know why, but there was something about it that felt important. Maybe it was the way it shimmered under the dim attic light, or perhaps it was the memories it seemed to stir up, a past he had tried to bury long ago. He made his way downstairs and inserted the flash drive into his old laptop, the one he had been using for random tasks, hoping to find some old biker maps or notes from his brotherhood. But what popped up on the screen shocked him. The file wasn't just a bunch of random data. It was a series of encrypted documents and images, documents that showed pictures of his past, of things he had long thought forgotten. His stomach churned as he saw the names of people he hadn't thought about in years, people he had wronged. The more he scrolled, the more he realized this wasn't just a random discovery. This was a key to a past he had desperately tried to escape, a past filled with mistakes, betrayal, and a life he wished he could erase. As the screen flickered, a new file opened. It was a letter, one he immediately recognized. It was a letter from his old gang leader, a man who had been like a father to him, now long dead. The letter was a reminder of the debts Jake still owed, and the promises he had broken. But this flash drive seemed to hold the answers to things he never even knew were questions. The data inside set his past on fire, and he knew, deep down, that he had just opened a door that would change everything. I woke up the next morning with a strange feeling gnawing at my gut. Jake had barely slept, his mind racing with the discoveries from the night before. He had tried to convince himself it was nothing, just a random flash drive, something he should toss out. But deep down, he knew better. Something about the files on that drive, the pictures, the names, all of it, seemed to be pulling him back into a past he had long tried to outrun. As he rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the screen again, the weight of it all began to sink in. He wasn't sure what he was expecting to find when he decided to plug it in, but certainly not this. He scrolled through the files once more, his hands shaking slightly. The names of old friends, people he once trusted, were there. People who had been involved in things far darker than just motorcycle clubs. He saw faces of men and women who were gone now, victims of the lifestyle he once embraced. It made his stomach turn. The file opened to a photo of a man Jake hadn't seen in years, his old mentor, Frank Steele Carver, the man who had taught Jake everything he knew about the road, the club, and how to survive. But now, looking at that photo, Jake couldn't help but feel betrayed. Frank had been the one to teach him the code of the Hells Angels, the code that had kept him alive for years. And yet, here he was, one of the key figures in this mess. The letter that followed was chilling. It was from Frank, dated 6 months before his death. It spoke of a big payout, a secret deal with corrupt officials, and a warning for Jake. You're in too deep now. If you don't get out, it will destroy everything we've built. Jake read those words again. He had thought Frank was talking about the club, about the dangers of living the outlaw life. But now, looking at the bigger picture, Jake realized Frank had been warning him about something far worse. It wasn't just the club that was dangerous. It was the men pulling the strings behind it. The phone rang, snapping Jake out of his thoughts. It was a number he didn't recognize. He hesitated before answering, feeling a pit form in his stomach. "Hello," he said gruffly, his voice rough from the lack of sleep. "Jake Morrison?" The voice on the other end asked, a tone of suspicion and authority in their words. "Yeah, who's this?" Jake replied, trying to keep his cool, but the unease in his chest was growing. "I need to speak with you. It's about the flash drive you found," the voice said, sending a chill through Jake's body. "You shouldn't have touched it. It's more dangerous than you think." Jake stood up, pacing around the room. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in on him. He had no idea who this was, but the mention of the flash drive made it clear that someone else knew what he had discovered. "What do you want from me?" Jake growled, trying to keep his composure. "I want to meet. Now. The longer you wait, the more dangerous it becomes. We have to discuss how to handle this," the voice said. "Meet me at the old warehouse on 4th Street in an hour. Come alone." The line went dead before Jake could respond. He stood there for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing on him. He wasn't sure who he was dealing with, but he knew one thing. Things were about to get a whole lot messier. He needed answers, but at what cost? He didn't trust easily, especially not with people who seemed to know too much about him. But the fact that this person knew about the flash drive meant they were connected to the same dark forces pulling at his past. He grabbed his leather jacket, the one that still had the Hell's Angels patch, and stormed out of the house. As he stepped outside, the cold air hit him like a slap to the face. His motorcycle was parked by the side, the rumble of the engine calling out to him. Jake's mind raced as he revved the engine, the sound cutting through the quiet morning. It was time to face whatever was coming. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this wasn't just about him anymore. He had to protect the one person who could still bring him peace, the little girl who had stumbled across this nightmare. He didn't know why, but something about her presence had calmed him the night before. She was the only one who seemed untouched by the darkness, the only one who hadn't been consumed by the past. As he sped toward the warehouse, Jake made a vow to himself. He would do whatever it took to keep her safe. The questions swirling in his mind would have to wait. Right now, his priority was survival, and the survival of the innocent. I arrived at the old warehouse on 4th Street exactly 1 hour later. The night had fallen fast, and the chill in the air cut through my leather jacket like a knife. The street was empty, just the way I liked it. No prying eyes, no distractions. The only sounds were the distant hum of city traffic and the crunch of my boots on the gravel. As I parked my motorcycle outside the warehouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The place looked deserted. There were no cars in the parking lot, no movement from inside. But that phone call had echoed in my head. "Come alone." That was the message. No backup, no help, just me. I walked toward the entrance, my boots making soft, purposeful thuds in the silence. My fingers grazed the cold metal of the door handle, and for a moment, I hesitated. This could be a trap. Hell, it probably was. But I had no choice. I needed to know what the hell was going on, and I needed to find out what that flash drive was connected to before it destroyed everything. I pushed the door open slowly. The creak of the hinges sounded loud in the stillness. Inside was dim, only a few flickering lights casting long shadows across the space. The warehouse smelled like old wood and rust, a place forgotten by time. I stepped inside, eyes scanning the room for any signs of movement. And then I saw him, a man sitting at a dusty table in the center of the warehouse. He was older, his face lined with age and experience, but there was something familiar about him. His clothes were nondescript, just a faded jacket and worn jeans. But the way he carried himself, the calmness in his demeanor, made my instincts flare. He was no stranger. He looked up as I walked in, his eyes sharp but calculating. He was waiting for me. "Jake Morrison," he said, his voice steady, like he already knew everything about me. "I assume you're the one with the flash drive." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at him, trying to figure out who he was and what he wanted. "You're wondering who I am," he continued, reading my mind. "Let's just say I've been keeping an eye on you for a while, and I know exactly what's on that flash drive." I took a cautious step forward, my hand instinctively resting on the pocket where my gun was holstered. "And what's on it?" I asked, my voice low. The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "It's a map, Jake. A map to a past you've been running from. A past I'm sure you'd rather forget." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew it. That damn flash drive was more than just a random find. It was a key to something far bigger than I could have imagined. You don't know what you're dealing with, I said, stepping closer, my heart racing. You have no idea what's on there. The man chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Oh, I know exactly what's on there. And I know exactly what you did, Jake. The people you betrayed, the things you covered up. But you're not the only one with secrets. We all have them. And that flash drive? It's the key to unlocking a whole new world of trouble. My pulse quickened. Who are you working for? I asked, my eyes narrowing. I'm not working for anyone. Jake, I'm here because I'm tired of watching people like you bury the truth. You've been part of something much bigger than you realize. The Hell's Angels, the corruption, the deals with the law, it's all connected. The realization hit me hard. I had been right all along. The club, the people I had trusted, had been working with forces that had their hands in everything. This wasn't just about bikes and beer. It was about power, about control, about something far darker than I had ever known. And what do you want from me? I asked, my voice tense. I want the flash drive, Jake. It's time to set things right. Time to bring everything to the surface. And if you want to survive, you'll help me. Or else, we'll both be buried in the past we've been running from. My heart raced as I thought about what he was asking. I had been running for years, burying my past, avoiding the truth. But now, it seemed like there was no escaping it. I wasn't sure if I could trust this man, but one thing was clear. If I didn't make a decision soon, the past was going to catch up with me in ways I couldn't even imagine. The man stood up, walking towards me with slow, deliberate steps. You have two choices, Jake. You can hand over the flash drive and help me fix this mess, or you can walk away and watch everything crumble. But I warn you, walking away won't be easy. The people involved in this are not the forgiving type. I stared at him, feeling the weight of the decision in my chest. You want me to join you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I don't need you to join me, the man replied. I need you to stop running. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand, the weight of it suddenly feeling heavier than it ever had. This was it, the point of no return. I had no choice but to move forward, to confront the demons of my past. But as I stood there, the warehouse suddenly felt much smaller, the walls closing in on me. The decision was made, and there was no turning back. I stood in the dimly lit warehouse, the air thick with dust and the smell of old leather. The man, who had been so confident just moments ago, was now standing across from me, waiting for my response. I could feel the weight of the flash drive in my pocket, heavy with the secrets it held. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never was. The past was coming for me, and whether I liked it or not, I had to face it. I was done running. All right, I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. I'll help you, but you better be sure you know what you're asking for. The man nodded, his eyes cold but approving. Good, he said simply, his voice calm. But first, we need to make sure that we're not walking into a trap. I looked at him, confused. What are you talking about? There are people out there who would do anything to get their hands on that flash drive. It's not just information. It's a ticking time bomb. If it falls into the wrong hands, everything we've worked for, everything you've tried to bury, will come crashing down. My stomach tightened at his words. I knew what he meant. The flash drive contained more than just old memories. It contained the truth. And the truth, as I had learned the hard way, was dangerous. So what's the plan? I asked, trying to ignore the unease creeping up my spine. We're going to need to find out who else is involved in this, he said. And we need to make sure that whoever is trying to keep it buried doesn't get their way. I have a few connections who can help us, but first, we need to figure out what we're really dealing with. I nodded, though my mind was still spinning. And what about the girl? I asked. The man's expression softened for a moment, and I could see a flicker of something, maybe compassion, maybe guilt, cross his face. We'll protect her, he said firmly. She's not involved in any of this. We can't let them hurt her. I let out a breath, relieved. The girl, the one who had discovered the flash drive in the first place, had been nothing more than a pawn in this game. She didn't deserve to be dragged into something so dark. I couldn't let anything happen to her. We'll need to move quickly, the man continued, breaking me from my thoughts. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it becomes. I'll get you the information you need, but you have to trust me. This isn't going to be easy. I'm used to difficult. I replied, trying to mask the nervousness creeping into my voice. What's next? Next, he said with a cold smile. We find out who's been hiding in the shadows and watching us for all these years. And once we know that, we take them down. No more running. No more hiding. The intensity in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. I wasn't sure who this man was anymore. If he was someone I could trust, or if he was just another player in a game I didn't fully understand. But one thing was clear, I was in this now. And I wasn't going to stop until I found out the truth. I walked toward the door, ready to face whatever came next. The man followed me, and together, we stepped out into the cold night, the streets of the city silent and empty. But as we moved through the darkness, I felt the weight of the flash drive pressing against my side. It wasn't just a piece of technology, it was a key that could unlock a past I wasn't ready to confront, a past I had tried so hard to forget. As we made our way to the car, my thoughts turned to the girl. What did she really know? How much had she seen? And what kind of trouble had she unwittingly walked into? I had promised to protect her, but I wasn't sure I could. Not with everything that was at stake. We drove in silence, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the radio. My mind raced with possibilities, trying to figure out the next move. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but there was nothing, just the empty road behind us. Still, the sense of danger lingered in the air. As we pulled into a quiet parking lot, I realized that we weren't just fighting to protect the girl. We were fighting to survive. To survive the consequences of a past that was catching up with us. And as much as I hated to admit it, I wasn't sure if we were going to make it out alive. The only thing I knew for certain was that the truth was out there, and it was coming for us. I sat in the dark parking lot, the engine of the car humming softly, as the man next to me remained silent. We had been driving for what felt like hours, the distance between us and the past growing shorter with every mile. My mind was still racing from the conversation we had just had at the warehouse. I was in deeper than I had ever been, pulled back into a world I had fought so hard to leave. But now, there was no turning back. The flash drive, now safely tucked in my jacket, was the key to everything. The answers, the people behind the scenes, the lies we had all lived. It was more than just a piece of technology. It was a weapon. The weight of it on my chest was a constant reminder of how much was at stake. The man beside me, whose name I still didn't fully trust, was my only ally in this. But even as I tried to convince myself that he was on my side, a part of me wondered if I was walking straight into another trap. We were headed to meet his contact, someone who supposedly knew everything about the situation. I didn't trust anyone anymore, especially not after everything that had happened. I thought about the girl. She had no idea what she had stumbled into when she found that flash drive. She was just a kid, caught in the crossfire of a war she couldn't even understand. The thought of her being dragged into this mess made my stomach turn. I promised I'd protect her, but I was starting to wonder if I was even capable of protecting myself. "We're almost there," the man said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made me uneasy. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road ahead. The streets were empty, the city quiet in the early hours of the morning. The weight of the decision that lay ahead pressed down on me. I didn't know what this meeting would bring, but I knew one thing. It was the last chance we had to stop whatever was coming for us. We pulled into a small alley, the dim lights casting long shadows on the buildings around us. The car stopped, and the man turned to face me. "Stay alert," he said, his tone more serious now. "This isn't over. We don't know who's on the other side of that door." "I know," I replied, reaching for the door handle. "Let's get this over with." As I stepped out of the car, the cool night air hit me, a sharp contrast to the heat in my chest. The building before me was run down, an old brick structure that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The man led the way, his steps quick and deliberate. I followed closely, my hand resting on the gun at my side. Every instinct told me something wasn't right. We reached the door, and the man knocked twice. A moment later, it opened. A tall figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light inside. "You made it," the figure said, his voice low and gravelly. "Come in." The man beside me stepped forward, and I followed, my senses on high alert. The room was dark, the only light coming from a single bulb hanging overhead. A large table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs. At the far end of the room, a man sat with his back to us, his face hidden in the shadows. "We don't have much time," the man in the shadows said, his voice rough. They're closing in. We need to act fast. I stepped forward, my hand still gripping the flash drive in my pocket. What do you know about this? I asked, trying to steady my voice. The man in the shadows turned slowly, revealing a face that I knew all too well. It was Frank Carver, my old mentor, the one who had taught me everything about the club. But this wasn't the man I remembered. The years had changed him. His face was harder, more worn, and his eyes, those eyes, were filled with regret. You shouldn't have come here, Jake, Frank said, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place. You don't know what you're walking into. I felt a chill run down my spine as I stared at him. I'm not backing down, I said firmly, my resolve hardening. I need to know what's going on. I need to know who's behind this. Frank sighed, his shoulders slumping as he leaned back in his chair. You've opened a door that should have stayed shut, Jake. This isn't just about the club anymore. It's bigger than that. And if you want to stop it, you need to be prepared to do whatever it takes. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had thought I was ready. I had thought I could handle whatever came my way. But this was a whole new level of danger. I glanced over at the man who had brought me here, but he remained silent, his face unreadable. Frank turned away for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. When he looked back at me, his eyes were filled with a sadness I hadn't seen before. You've got one shot at this, Jake, he said quietly. And if you don't make the right choice, it'll all be over. My heart raced as I processed his words. What the hell had I gotten myself into? I stood frozen as Frank's words sank in. The air in the room felt heavier, the walls closing in with every passing second. I had come here for answers, but now it seemed like I was tangled in a mess far bigger than I ever imagined. Frank Carver, the man who had once been a mentor, was telling me that everything I thought I knew was a lie. He had given me the truth, and now it felt like I had no choice but to swallow it, no matter how bitter it was. One shot, Frank repeated, his voice more somber than before. If you go down this road, there's no going back. The people who are involved in this, they don't just let things go. They'll come after you. They'll come after everyone you care about. The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't scared of the club, of the life I had lived, or even of the dangers that had always followed me. But this was different. There were forces involved here that were bigger than the Hells Angels, bigger than anything I had ever known. I clenched my fists at my sides, trying to steady my breathing. Then tell me what I need to do, I said, my voice rough, but filled with determination. Frank looked at me, his eyes searching mine, as if he were weighing whether or not he should say more. After a long pause, he spoke. I've spent my whole life running, Jake. Running from the things I've done, from the people I've betrayed. And now, it's all coming back to collect. But you're still young enough to make a choice. You can still walk away. You don't have to get caught up in this. His words hit hard. I wasn't sure if he was trying to warn me, or if he was just trying to protect me from the truth. But I wasn't the same person I was when I first joined the club. I had learned the hard way that running never worked. I couldn't walk away. I'm not running anymore, Frank, I said, stepping closer to him. Tell me what I need to do. I don't care what it takes. I need to end this. Once and for all. Frank's expression softened for a moment. There's a place, he said, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper from his jacket pocket and handing it to me. A warehouse on the outskirts of town. It's where everything started. And it's where it all ends. I took the paper, looking at the address scrawled on it. The location meant nothing to me, but I could tell from the way Frank said it that this was the key. This was where everything would come to a head. And you'll help me? I asked, looking at Frank for the first time as an ally, not a mentor. He hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering with a mixture of regret and resolve. I'll help you, but I won't be able to stay. Once you go in, you'll be on your own. They'll be watching. They've always been watching. I didn't need any more warnings. I knew what I was getting into. This was it. The moment I would either sink or swim. I'll handle it, I said, my voice unwavering. Frank nodded, standing up slowly. I believe you will. But remember, Jake, the past doesn't let go easily. And if you don't do this right, it'll swallow you whole. We walked to the door together, the weight of the situation still hanging over us. As I stepped out into the cold night air, I could feel the tension building inside me, like a storm about to break. The city was quiet, too quiet. It felt like the calm before the chaos. You'll want to get there before sunrise, Frank said, his voice low. That's when they're most vulnerable. But make sure you're ready for anything. This won't be an easy fight. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled my jacket tighter around me and headed for my bike. The engine roared to life as I sped down the darkened streets, the cold wind biting at my face. My mind was focused, sharp. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about survival. I couldn't afford to let my guard down, not even for a second. The warehouse loomed ahead, just as Frank had described it. I could see the faint outline of the building in the distance, its windows dark and lifeless. My heart was pounding in my chest, my grip tightening around the handlebars of my motorcycle. This was it, the end of the line. As I pulled up to the entrance, I saw the shadows of two men standing guard. They hadn't noticed me yet, but it wouldn't be long before they did. I took a deep breath, my body going on high alert. This wasn't going to be a walk in the park, but I was ready. I had to be. I slipped off the bike, quietly drawing my weapon. The flash drive was still in my pocket, but now it felt heavier than ever. I wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. I was fighting for my life. And when the truth came out, there would be no going back. I approached the warehouse cautiously, the cold air cutting through me like a sharp knife. The shadows of the two guards were unmistakable, standing still and vigilant in the distance. I knew I had to move quickly, but silently. I couldn't afford to make a sound. My heart was pounding in my chest, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I slowly crept toward the entrance. The flash drive in my pocket felt heavier than it ever had before. I could feel the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me, urging me to make the right choice. This was my moment to either set things right or lose everything. I had no backup, no second chance. As I got closer, I could see the outlines of the guards more clearly, their figures casting long shadows across the gravel. I ducked, behind a stack of crates, holding my breath as I waited for the right moment. Every muscle in my body was tensed, ready to spring into action. The guards didn't seem to notice me, their attention focused elsewhere. I silently pulled the gun from my holster, checking the chamber to make sure it was loaded. I had no intention of using it unless I had to, but I wasn't about to walk in unprepared. The stillness of the night was broken only by the distant hum of the city and the sound of my own heartbeat. Time seemed to slow down as I waited. And then, in a flash, the guard on the left turned away, walking toward the other side of the building. I seized the opportunity. My movements were swift and calculated as I darted toward the entrance. The guard on the right never saw me coming. I pressed my back against the cold metal door, carefully turning the handle. It creaked slightly, but it wasn't loud enough to alert him. I slipped inside. The warehouse was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a few overhead lights. The smell of rust and old machinery filled the air, a reminder of how long this place had been abandoned. I moved quietly through the rows of crates and shelves, my senses heightened. There was no turning back now. I had to find the answers I needed and get out. As I ventured deeper into the building, I could hear muffled voices coming from the back. I paused, pressing myself against a metal support beam, listening intently. The voices were low, but I could make out a few words. "He's here," one of them said. "He has the drive." My pulse quickened. They were talking about me, and they knew I was coming. I didn't have much time. I crept forward, making sure my footsteps were as silent as possible. I rounded a corner and stopped dead in my tracks. There they were, 3 men, sitting around a table covered with papers and documents. The man at the head of the table looked up as I entered, his eyes narrowing as he took in my presence. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "You really think you can change anything?" I didn't say anything at first, just stood there, my hand resting on the gun at my side. "You're wasting your time," the man continued, his tone mocking. "You think you can stop us? You've already lost." "Maybe," I said, my voice calm. "But I'm not leaving here without the truth." The man's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something like recognition crossing his face. "So it's the truth you want," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Well, you're going to get more than you bargained for." He gestured to the papers on the table. "Those documents hold the key to everything, Jake. The Hell's Angels, the deals we've made, the people we've brought into this mess. It's all there. And if you want to know what happens next, it's all in your hands." I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't just about the club anymore. It was about power, control, and I was standing right in the middle of it. The man stood up, slowly walking toward me. "But you're not ready, Jake. You don't know what you're dealing with. This is bigger than you think." He was right. I had no idea how deep this went. But I couldn't back down now. Not when I was this close to the truth. I'm ready, I said, my voice firm. And I'm taking everything you've hidden. All of it. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We'll see about that, he said, his eyes narrowing. As he spoke, the door to the warehouse slammed open, and I turned, instinctively reaching for my gun. But it was too late. A group of men entered, all wearing the same dark clothing, their faces hidden in the shadows. I had walked right into a trap. My heart raced as I scanned the room, calculating my next move. They were closing in, and there was no way out. My only option was to fight. Looks like you've got nowhere to go, Jake, the man said, his smile widening as he saw the fear in my eyes. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I had come this far, and I wasn't going to stop now. The truth was within reach, and I was willing to risk everything to get it. I knew the odds were stacked against me the moment the door slammed open. The sudden rush of men filling the warehouse brought a wave of tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Their footsteps echoed as they moved forward, their dark figures closing in from all directions. It was a trap, one I had walked right into. I had no backup, no escape route. It felt like I was suffocating in this place, the air heavy with the weight of secrets that had been buried for too long. The man I had been talking to earlier, the one who seemed to know everything, stood off to the side, watching with a smug grin. His arms were folded, as if he was enjoying the show. Looks like you've been caught in the middle of something you don't understand, he said, his voice smooth, almost too calm. The men behind him were armed, their hands resting on the handles of their guns, their eyes cold with indifference. I felt my pulse racing, but I wasn't about to show them fear. I had been through worse. You think you can stop me? I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. You're about to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong person. The leader of the group, a tall man with a scar running down his left cheek, stepped forward. He was the one who had been watching me closely, the one who had been giving off the coldest vibe. You think you're a big shot, huh? He sneered. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's ours? I didn't respond. Instead, I slowly moved my hand towards the gun at my side, my eyes locked on his. But just as I was about to draw, the man raised his hand. Wait, he said, his voice suddenly calm. Let's see what he does. He was testing me, watching for any sign of weakness. I stood there, waiting for the right moment, my body tense. They were trying to get under my skin, but I wasn't going to fall for it. We don't have time for games, I said, my tone unwavering. If you want the flash drive, come and take it. The scarred man smiled, his teeth flashing in the low light. You really think it's that simple? He asked, taking a step closer. You've got no idea what you're dealing with. You don't understand the power you've just unleashed. I didn't flinch. I had heard threats like this before, but none of them had ever stopped. Me. Power. I repeated, laughing bitterly. I've seen power. I've seen what happens when people like you play God with the lives of others. His smile faltered, but he didn't back down. You think you're some hero, Jake? He sneered. You think you're going to save everyone? You can't save yourself from what's coming. I knew then that words weren't going to get me out of this. They were too many, too well armed. But I wasn't helpless. I had made it this far, and I wasn't about to go down without a fight. I scanned the room, looking for anything I could use to my advantage. A metal pipe lay on the floor nearby, discarded in the chaos. My eyes flicked to the men surrounding me, their attention now focused on my every movement. In that split second, I lunged for the pipe, grabbing it with both hands and swinging it at the closest man. The impact was brutal, knocking him off balance and sending him crashing to the ground. The others reacted quickly, but I was already moving, spinning around to face the next threat. My heart pounded in my chest as I ducked a punch and swung the pipe again, knocking another man to the ground. I wasn't just fighting for my life now. I was fighting for the truth, for the people I cared about. As the last man fell, I stood panting, the adrenaline still surging through me. But I wasn't safe yet. I could hear more footsteps approaching, heavier this time. The door at the back of the warehouse creaked open, and a new group of figures stepped inside. These men weren't here to negotiate. They were here to finish what had been started. I gripped the pipe tighter, my knuckles white. This wasn't going to be easy, but I was done running. You're making a big mistake, I said, my voice calm, though my heart was racing. You're not going to walk out of here with that flash drive. You're not walking out of here, period. The leader of the new group stepped forward, his face hidden in the shadows. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, sizing me up. Finally, he spoke. "You're in over your head, Jake," he said. "This isn't just about you anymore. This is bigger than the Hells Angels. Bigger than anything you can control." I didn't flinch. "Then, it's time someone put an end to it," I said. "And I'm the one who's going to do it." With that, I charged forward, ready for whatever came next. I swung the pipe with all my strength, connecting with the first man's chest. He stumbled back, gasping for air, before collapsing to the floor with a sickening thud. The others rushed in, but I was already moving, adrenaline surging through my veins. I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time for hesitation. Every second counted. The leader of the new group stepped forward, his silhouette still shadowed by the dim lights above. His calm demeanor only made me more nervous. I had faced many enemies, but something about him felt different. He wasn't just here to fight. He was here for something bigger. "You think this is the end, Jake?" the leader asked, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "This is just the beginning. You've made a lot of mistakes, but this one? It's going to cost you everything." I didn't answer. Instead, I readied myself for what was coming next. Another man lunged toward me, but I sidestepped just in time, using the pipe to block his strike. I swung again, hitting him square in the ribs. He crumpled to the ground with a grunt, barely able to catch his breath. I couldn't let them surround me. The room felt smaller with each passing second. The men moved like predators, circling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My mind raced, scanning the environment for anything that could give me an edge. The metal beams above, the crates scattered across the floor, anything. I needed to make this quick. I couldn't keep fighting them all night. The leader watched, his eyes locked onto me, as if he was studying my every move. He didn't make a sound, just observed as his men closed in. I could feel his eyes on me, trying to read me, trying to predict my next move. But I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I had to take control of the situation, or it was over. I threw the pipe forward, making it look like I was about to strike one of them. The moment the man flinched, I dove toward a nearby crate, knocking it over in the process. It caused enough of a distraction for me to grab a metal rod from the pile of junk nearby. It was heavier than the pipe, but it felt more solid in my hands. I wasn't going to leave this fight empty-handed. I swung the rod with brutal force, knocking another attacker back, and just as I was about to strike again, the leader spoke. "Stop." His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The men froze, looking to him for guidance. "He's not worth it," the leader continued, his voice suddenly cold and commanding. "Jake, you think you can fight your way out of this, but you're wrong. This isn't about you anymore. It's about the bigger picture." I stood there, breathless, my hands shaking around the rod. "The bigger picture?" I asked, my voice rough from the fight. "What the hell are you talking about?" The leader stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "The truth you're after," he said, his voice quieter now, almost too calm. "It's more dangerous than you can possibly understand. You think this flash drive is your ticket to revenge? You think it's going to give you the answers you want? You're wrong. It's a death sentence. For you and everyone else who gets involved." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I thought I was ready for whatever this fight was, but the fear in his voice, the certainty that everything I had been chasing was about to come crashing down, made me question everything. "You're lying," I said, my voice low. "You're just trying to scare me." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm not trying to scare you, Jake. I'm telling you the truth. And you're running out of time." The men around me took a step back, sensing the shift in the air. I tightened my grip on the rod, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I didn't know who to trust anymore. Everyone had their own agenda, their own plans. And in the middle of it all, there I was, just trying to survive, trying to find the answers that could bring peace. But the more I fought, the more I realized that peace wasn't an option. This wasn't just a fight for answers. It was a fight for survival. The leader didn't move, his cold eyes never leaving mine. "We can end this right now, Jake," he said. "You can walk away, or you can keep fighting. But if you keep fighting, you're going to lose. I guarantee it." I stood there torn. He was right. The fight wasn't just about me anymore. It was bigger than I could handle on my own. But I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to back down. I had come too far to stop now. "I'm not done," I said, my voice steady now. "I'll never back down." The leader's smile faded. He didn't expect that, but he wasn't backing down either. "Then let's see how far you're willing to go," he said, his eyes hardening. In that moment, I realized the truth. There was no easy way out. There never had been. And the fight had only just begun. I stood there, the tension in the air thick enough to choke on. The leader's cold stare never left my face, and I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. He was right about one thing. I wasn't ready for this. But I wasn't about to back down either. I had made my choice, and there was no turning back now. I'm not walking away, I said, my voice steady, even though every muscle in my body was on edge. I've come too far. The man raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a small, almost amused smile. You're stubborn, he said. I like that. But stubbornness doesn't change the facts. You're out of your depth here, Jake. His words were like daggers, but they only fueled the fire inside me. He didn't know who he was dealing with. I wasn't just some fool riding on a high. I had lived through the worst, and if he thought a few threats were going to stop me, he was sorely mistaken. You can keep talking, but it's not going to change anything, I said, stepping forward. You've made your move. Now, I'm making mine. The men around me shifted, uneasy but waiting for their leader to give the command. The air was electric, charged with the anticipation of what was coming. The leader sighed, clearly not expecting this level of resistance. He gestured to the men behind him, and suddenly, the room was alive with movement. But before they could react, I lunged forward, making a break for the back of the warehouse. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing. I had to move fast. I had no idea what lay ahead, but I wasn't going to let them catch me. The sound of footsteps behind me was deafening, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel their presence, closing in, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I pushed forward, ducking behind a stack of crates, my breath coming in short bursts. My eyes scanned the room, trying to figure out my next move. There were too many of them, and I was running out of time. I knew the flash drive was the key to everything, but I had to get out with it. The door ahead of me was my only shot. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. I took a deep breath and moved toward it, my steps light but deliberate. The men were closing in, but I was faster. I reached the door and kicked it open, bursting into the alleyway outside. The cold air hit me like a punch, but I didn't stop. I kept running, my legs burning, my breath shallow. I could hear them behind me, but I wasn't going to let them catch me. Not this time. I rounded the corner and saw the street ahead, but there was no sign of my bike. My heart sank. I had left it parked just outside the warehouse, but now it was nowhere to be seen. They had taken it. Panic started to set in, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't afford to lose focus now. I had to find another way. I darted down the street, looking for any sign of a vehicle, anything that could get me out of here. And then, I saw it. A black van was parked a few feet away, its engine running. The side door was open, and the driver was sitting behind the wheel, his face obscured by shadows. I didn't hesitate. I ran for it, jumping into the open door and slamming it shut behind me. The driver didn't say a word, but I could feel his eyes on me in the rearview mirror. I was out of breath, my heart still pounding, but I couldn't relax yet. I had no idea who this guy was, or whether he was with them. Drive, I said, my voice rough. Take me to the warehouse on 4th Street. The driver didn't question me. He simply nodded and hit the gas, the van speeding down the street. I leaned back against the seat, trying to calm myself, but my mind was still racing. The flash drive was in my pocket, but I knew I couldn't keep it there much longer. I had to destroy it, or else they would come for me again. You know what's on that flash drive, don't you? The driver asked, his voice low and gravelly. I turned to look at him, my pulse quickening. What do you know about it? I asked. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes narrowing. I know enough. It's not just information. It's a map. A map that leads to something much bigger than you or me. You're in deep, Jake. Deeper than you think. I didn't say anything at first. I was trying to process his words, but it was like trying to put a puzzle together when you didn't have all the pieces. The driver was right about one thing. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was bigger than anything I had ever imagined. I looked out the window, the city lights flashing by as we sped toward the warehouse. What's going to happen when we get there? I asked. The driver didn't answer immediately. He just kept his eyes on the road, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. We find the truth, he said finally, and we end it. One way or another. My stomach dropped. I didn't know if I was ready for that, but I didn't have a choice. The truth was out there, and I was going to have to face it. But as the van sped through the city streets, One thought kept repeating in my mind. Could I really trust this guy? Or was I walking into another trap? I sat in the back of the van, my mind racing, my hands sweating despite the cool night air. The driver, who had been silent since our last exchange, continued to drive with a steady hand, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every so often. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all a setup, that I was being led straight into the heart of something I couldn't control. The flash drive was still in my pocket, burning a hole in my thoughts. What was on it? What would it reveal about me, about the people I had once called brothers? The van's headlights cut through the darkness as we sped through the empty streets, the city silent at this hour. I had been here before, in this place where danger lurked around every corner, but this time it felt different. There was a weight to the air, a sense that I was about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "You're nervous," the driver said, breaking the silence. I turned my head toward him, narrowing my eyes. "You think?" I muttered, my voice rough. He gave a short, humorless chuckle. "You're not the first one to feel that way," he said. Hell, I was nervous when I got involved in this mess. I studied him for a moment, wondering if he was speaking from experience or if it was all just a part of the game he was playing. "How deep does this go?" I asked. The driver didn't look at me. "You don't want to know," he replied, his voice distant. "But you're in it now, and there's no turning back. You're going to have to make a choice." A choice. That word echoed in my head. I had been making choices my entire life, but this was different. I wasn't sure what I was walking into. I wasn't sure what would happen next. But I did know one thing. I couldn't stop. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. "And what's the plan when we get there?" I asked, trying to focus, trying to stay grounded. The driver finally glanced at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "We're going to get the truth. That's the plan." I swallowed hard, but I didn't say anything. The truth had always been elusive, always just out of reach. I had thought that once I found it, everything would fall into place. But now, the closer I got, the more I realized that the truth wasn't a single thing. It was a web of lies, half-truths, and things that no one had ever intended for me to see. I wasn't just uncovering secrets. I was uncovering a legacy of betrayal and manipulation that went far deeper than I could have imagined. The van turned onto a quieter street, and I saw the warehouse up ahead, its outline dark against the night sky. I felt the pressure in my chest tighten, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was it. The final stretch. The van slowed as we approached the building, and the driver pulled into a parking space behind a row of dumpsters, out of sight from the street. The silence between us stretched on as we both sat there for a moment. "Ready?" the driver asked, his voice quieter now. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if I was. I had no choice. This was the moment everything would change, and I was either going to come out of it alive or buried under the weight of my past. The driver got out first, and I followed suit, my hand resting on the gun at my side. I didn't plan on using it unless I had to, but in a place like this, you never knew what could happen. We walked to the entrance, and the driver knocked twice on the door, just like Frank had said. A few seconds later, the door creaked open, and a man appeared in the doorway. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and his face was obscured by a hood. He didn't say anything at first, just studied me for a moment before stepping aside to let us in. Inside, the warehouse was as dark and grimy as I remembered. The faint scent of oil and rust filled the air, and the sound of distant machinery hummed in the background. But it was the people standing in the shadows that caught my attention. They were watching me closely, sizing me up. "This is him," the driver said, his voice carrying just enough weight to make the room go still. "Jake Morrison." The figure in the shadows stepped forward, his face illuminated by the dim light overhead. I froze. It was Frank. Frank Carver, my old mentor. But something was off. His eyes were harder now, his expression colder. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Frank said, his voice rough. "We've got a lot to talk about." I felt a lump form in my throat. It had been years since I had seen him, but his presence still hit me like a punch to the gut. "What's going on, Frank?" I asked, trying to steady myself. "Why am I here?" Frank studied me for a long moment, his eyes unreadable. "Because you've been chasing answers, Jake. But the truth isn't something you find. It's something you have to survive." His words echoed in my head, and I realized then that I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't control. The choice had been made. The past was coming for me, and there was no escaping it. This was the beginning of the end. I stood there, staring at Frank, my mind racing. The moment I thought I was finally getting answers, things had only gotten more complicated. Frank's face was the same as it had always been, but his eyes, they were harder now, colder, like he had seen too much and couldn't turn back. I wasn't sure what had happened to him in the years since we'd last spoken, but it was clear that whatever I had walked into tonight was bigger than me. "You've been chasing answers, Jake," Frank said, his voice rough, but there was something almost apologetic in the way he said it. "But the truth isn't something you find. It's something you have to survive." The words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of them sink in, like a stone dropped into a pond. "Survive?" I repeated, shaking my head. "What the hell does that even mean, Frank?" He looked at me for a long moment, almost as if he were measuring me, trying to figure out if I was ready for what he had to say. "It means you're in deep, kid. The kind of deep where if you're not careful, you'll drown." I clenched my fists at my sides, the tension building in my chest. "So that's it. You're just going to stand there and tell me I've got no chance?" I asked, my voice rising. "You think I haven't been through hell before? I've already made it through worse, Frank. I'm not backing down now." Frank didn't flinch. His expression remained unchanged, his hands folded in front of him as he leaned against the metal beam. "I know what you've been through," he said quietly. "But this isn't about your past anymore. It's about what comes next." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger that was bubbling up inside me. He was right, damn him. My past had always been a part of me, but now it felt like it was being dragged back into the spotlight. "Then what happens next?" "Frank," I asked, my voice steady this time. "What do we do?" Frank pushed himself off the beam, moving closer to me. "We stop running," he said, his voice low and fierce. "We stop hiding. We face the truth, and we take down the people who've been pulling the strings all these years." I met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. I had spent so much of my life running, hiding from the mistakes I had made, the things I had done. But now, as I stood here, I realized that I couldn't run anymore. I was already in too deep. "Who's behind this, Frank?" I asked, my voice steady, demanding. Frank hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "It's not just the Hell's Angels, Jake," he said. "It's bigger than that. There are people in high places, people with power and money, who have been using the club as a pawn in their game. They've been manipulating us for years, and we've been too blind to see it." I felt my blood run cold at his words. I had always known that the club was a dangerous place, but this was something else entirely. "Who are they?" I asked, my throat dry. Frank looked at me, his eyes hard. "I can't give you names yet," he said, his voice tight. "But I'll tell you this. They won't stop until they have everything. The flash drive you've got? It's just the beginning. It's the key to everything." My stomach churned at the thought of it. The flash drive had always been a symbol of something I had to protect, something I had to understand. But now it felt like a target on my back. "What do we do now?" I asked, my mind racing. Frank took a step back, looking around the dimly lit warehouse. "We go to the source," he said. "We find out who's been running the show, and we take them down." My heart pounded in my chest, but I knew there was no turning back now. I had made my choice. I had to finish this. "Let's do it," I said, my voice hard with resolve. "I'm not backing down." Frank nodded, his expression grave. "You sure about this, Jake?" he asked, his voice low. "Because once we go down this road, there's no turning back." I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." Frank's eyes flickered. For a moment, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of approval in them. "All right," he said. "We move tonight. No more waiting." He turned, motioning for me to follow. As we walked toward the back of the warehouse, I felt a sense of finality settle in. The past had brought me here, but it was the future that would decide if I made it out alive. The choice had been made, and there was no turning back. I stood at the entrance of the abandoned building, the cold night air pressing down on me like a weight. Frank had led the way, moving with purpose, while I followed, feeling the weight of everything that had brought me here. The truth was within reach now, but it felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, unsure if stepping forward would lead to victory or my downfall. We had come this far, and there was no turning back. The flash drive, still burning a hole in my pocket, was the key to everything. It held the answers I had been searching for, but it also carried a danger I wasn't fully prepared for. As we stepped into the building, the faint hum of machinery in the distance filled the silence. Frank moved toward the back of the room, his every step measured, deliberate. I followed closely, my senses heightened. I had no idea what was waiting for us, but I knew one thing. This was the final showdown. The room was dim, the only light coming from a few flickering bulbs hanging overhead. The air smelled of old metal and dust, a place long forgotten by time. At the far end of the room, a figure stood, silhouetted in the shadows. His presence was heavy, his posture confident, and I could feel his eyes on me even before he spoke. "I knew you'd come," the figure said, his voice calm but laced with authority. "But I didn't expect you to bring Frank with you." Frank stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You should have expected me," he said, his voice cold. "You know damn well I wouldn't let you get away with this." The figure in the shadows chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "I wasn't worried about you, Frank," he said. "You've always been a pawn in a much bigger game. You've been too blind to see it." I felt my blood run cold at the words. Who was this guy? And why did he sound like he knew everything about us? Frank's expression darkened, his fists clenched at his sides. "You've been pulling the strings all along, haven't you?" Frank said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "You've been behind everything. The club, the deals, the lies. And now you think you can walk away from it all." The man in the shadows didn't move, his eyes still locked on Frank. "It's not about walking away," he said. "It's about control. And I've always been in control." He stepped forward, his face finally illuminated by the dim light. I recognized him immediately. It was someone I thought was long gone, someone I never expected to see again. "You," I said, my voice faltering. "You're the one who's been pulling the strings." The man smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "Surprised?" he asked. "You should be. All these years, you thought you knew who your enemies were, but you never saw me coming. I've been watching, waiting for the right moment. And now, the moment has come." I couldn't believe it. The man who had once been a mentor, someone I trusted, was the one responsible for everything. The corruption, the lies, the pain, it all led back to him. I had been fighting the wrong battle all along. "You were never supposed to find out," he continued, his voice steady and cold. "The truth was never meant for you. You should have stayed away, Jake. But now you're too deep, and there's no way out." My mind raced, but I didn't say anything. What was left to say? The truth had been staring me in the face, and I had ignored it for too long. Frank stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You've ruined everything, haven't you?" he asked. "You used the club, used us, and for what? Power? Money?" The man shrugged, unbothered by Frank's anger. "Power is the only thing that matters," he said. "And now it's mine." The words hung in the air like poison, suffocating everything around us. I had known that this world was dangerous, but I hadn't understood the extent of the manipulation, the games people played to maintain control. And now, I was caught in the middle of it all. I felt a surge of anger rise in me, but I kept it in check. "You've already won," I said, my voice steady. "But it's not over yet. Not for me." The man's smile faltered for just a moment, but then he regained his composure. "You think you can stop me?" he asked, his tone mocking. "You're nothing. Just a pawn. And when I'm done with you, there won't be anything left." The words stung, but I wasn't about to let him see how much they affected me. "You can take everything I've got," I said, my eyes narrowing. "But I'll never let you win." Frank stepped forward, his eyes cold with determination. "We're taking you down, and we're doing it together," he said. The man in the shadows took a step back, his face now a mask of calm. "We'll see about that," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. As the final confrontation loomed before us, I felt the weight of everything that had led me here pressing down on my shoulders. The truth was out there, but it wasn't just about finding it anymore. It was about surviving it, and making sure the people who had been controlling everything didn't get away with it. The battle had just begun, and there was no going back.